The morning air in the small American city was crisp, carrying the faint scent of dew and freshly mown grass. Birds chirped as the sun peeked above the rooftops, casting a golden glow over the neighborhood park. 7-year-old Emma Parker skipped along the paved path, her small puppy, Biscuit, bounding joyfully beside her. Emma's chestnut hair caught the sunlight, and her bright blue eyes sparkled with excitement. She had been waiting for this morning all week, eager to play with Biscuit and watch the neighborhood squirrels scurry through the trees. Today felt special, even ordinary, until everything changed in a single heart-stopping moment. Emma threw a small rubber ball, and Biscuit lunged after it with unrestrained energy. Emma laughed, calling his name. "Biscuit, wait!" But the little dog's excitement overpowered his obedience. In a blink, Biscuit darted past the park fence and into the street. Emma's laughter vanished, replaced by terror as she ran after him, her tiny legs pumping frantically against the concrete. Cars were moving along the quiet street, and one honked sharply as Biscuit trotted dangerously close. Emma screamed, her voice sharp and panicked, but her puppy, oblivious to danger, continued his reckless adventure. At that moment, Officer Daniels, a seasoned police officer on patrol, spotted the commotion. His trained eyes immediately identified the potential danger. A small child and an unrestrained dog in the street were a recipe for disaster. He called out, "Mom, step back." But his voice barely carried over Emma's frantic cries. As he approached, his partner brought Rex, the department's canine officer, a German shepherd trained for apprehension, search, and rescue. Rex's coat gleamed under the sunlight, and his intense gaze locked onto Biscuit. Emma froze, realizing Rex was large, intimidating, and moving with purpose. "Stay calm, Emma." Her mother's voice rang out from the park's edge. Mrs. Parker had witnessed the puppy's escape and sprinted toward her daughter. Fear etched across her face. Emma's small hand clutched the leash of the now slightly out of control Biscuit. The neighbors gathered, whispering and pointing, drawn to the unfolding scene. Cars slowed, drivers leaning out of their windows, trying to understand what was happening. The atmosphere was tense, charged with adrenaline and the fear of imminent danger. Emma felt panic swell in her chest. Her small voice trembled. "Biscuit, come back." But Biscuit, caught up in his own excitement, ignored her pleas. "Officer." Daniels called Rex forward, his commands precise and firm. The dog's muscles tensed, every sense attuned to the situation. Emma's heart raced as she watched Rex approach, his paws heavy against the asphalt. She instinctively stepped in front of her puppy, shielding him. "No, stop," she yelled, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her body shook, fear and protectiveness warring within her small frame. Rex stopped short, trained to obey the officer's commands, but his presence alone was enough to freeze Emma in place. The German shepherd's amber eyes, sharp and alert, locked onto her, and for a moment, time seemed suspended. Emma's mind raced. She thought of Biscuit's safety, the danger of the street, and the imposing canine in front of her. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but she knew that movement might provoke Rex or worsen the situation. She sank to her knees, holding Biscuit close, whispering soothing words to him, while keeping her gaze fixed on the officer and his dog. "Emma, it's okay," Officer Daniels said, his voice softer now. He recognized the child's terror and wanted to prevent further escalation. The tension in the street was palpable. Neighbors were holding their breath, unsure if a disaster was about to occur. A small crowd had gathered, some filming with their phones, some offering verbal encouragement. Emma's father had arrived, rushing past the officers. He knelt beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Sweetheart, it's going to be okay. Just stay calm," he said. Emma nodded, though her entire body quivered with fear. Meanwhile, Rex's attention shifted slightly from Biscuit to Emma. There was something in the child's posture, her courage despite fear, that gave the officer confidence. He ordered Rex back. The German shepherd obeyed, sitting down. A few feet away, but his eyes never left the girl or her puppy. The street seemed to hold its breath. Emma slowly extended her hand, brushing Biscuit's fur, trying to steady herself. The officer approached cautiously, his hand raised in a gesture of calm. "We're not going to hurt you or Biscuit," he reassured her. The crowd exhaled collectively as the immediate danger passed, but the incident was far from over. Neighbors whispered about the presence of a police dog in such a situation, and Emma's parents worried about the consequences of what had unfolded. While no one had been harmed, the interaction had drawn official attention. The officer noted down the details and explained to the park patrol that a formal report would be filed. Emma's parents exchanged worried glances, fearing that this innocent accident could escalate into something far more serious than a simple morning mishap. By the time Emma and her family left the street, the adrenaline had faded, replaced by lingering fear and relief. She held Biscuit tightly, feeling the puppy's warmth and soft fur against her chest. "I'm so sorry, Biscuit," she whispered, hugging him. Her parents walked beside her, holding her hands firmly, trying to comfort her while processing the stress of the situation. For Emma, the experience had been terrifying, but it had also planted the seeds of courage and empathy, qualities that would later define her remarkable encounter in the courtroom. That night, Emma could not sleep. She recounted every detail in her mind: the cars, the officer, the giant dog, Rex, and the terrified yet determined feelings she had experienced. Her parents sat by her bedside, reassuring her that she had done nothing wrong and that sometimes accidents happen despite best intentions. Emma clutched Biscuit, feeling the rapid rise and fall of his tiny chest, thinking of how easily danger had entered their quiet lives. Deep inside, she knew the incident would not be forgotten, and her courage in facing such fear would soon be tested again in ways she could not yet imagine. The next day, a letter arrived, a formal summons for Emma to appear in court. The city's legal system was involved, and a minor accident had escalated to an official matter. Emma's parents were alarmed, but they reassured their daughter that honesty and explanation would guide them. Emma's imagination wandered as she pictured the courtroom, Rex, and all the adults she had seen on the street. Though small and frightened, she felt a glimmer of determination. She realized that her actions, her empathy for her puppy, and her courage under pressure were her strongest tools in the days to come. In retrospect, the incident at the park seemed like the start of something much larger than Emma herself. It was a test of innocence, courage, and the unexpected bond between a small child and a trained police dog. What began as a simple morning adventure in the park had evolved into a story that would ripple across the city, drawing attention, empathy, and admiration. Emma, Biscuit, and even Rex would soon be part of a story that reminded everyone that courage can be found in the smallest hearts, and understanding can emerge from moments of fear. The morning sun filtered through the Parker household windows, casting a warm glow across the living room, where Emma sat curled up on the sofa, Biscuit resting beside her. Despite the comfort of home, a lingering unease filled the air. Emma's parents, John and Claire Parker, exchanged worried glances, their hands busy with cups of coffee they barely drank. A crisp envelope lay on the kitchen table, stark and official, bearing the seal of the local courthouse. It had arrived the previous day, and they had hesitated to open it, fearing the formal consequences of what had been a frightening but innocent incident. Emma, curious and perceptive, noticed the envelope before her parents could hide it. "What's that?" she asked, tilting her head, her voice small but insistent. Her parents froze for a moment. Then John cleared his throat, forcing a reassuring smile. "It's nothing to worry about, sweetie. Just some papers from the city. Nothing serious." But Claire's tightening grip on the envelope betrayed her. Anxiety. Emma tilted her head further, her small eyes wide with curiosity. She had seen enough seriousness in her parents' expressions to know that something important was inside. Later that morning, after school, Emma and her parents sat at the kitchen table. The envelope lay between them like an unspoken shadow. Claire finally opened it, revealing a court summons. The words were simple, clinical, yet they carried weight. Emma was required to appear in court to provide her account of the incident involving Biscuit and the police dog, Rex. Emma read the letter slowly, her brow furrowing as her small hands trembled slightly. "Court? Like a big room with a judge?" she asked quietly. John reached over and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Yes, sweetheart," he said gently. "It's a place where they listen to both sides of a story. You just tell them what happened honestly, and everything will be okay." Emma nodded, though her heart pounded. She had never been in such a place. The idea of sitting in a room filled with adults, some wearing suits, some with authority, and a large, imposing police dog made her stomach twist with nervous energy. Over the next few days, the Parkers prepared Emma for the upcoming court date. They practiced speaking slowly, explaining events clearly, and remembering to tell the truth no matter what. Claire knelt beside her daughter one afternoon, smoothing her hair back. "Emma, remember, you don't need to be scared. Just say what you saw and what you felt. That's all that matters." Emma nodded, though she clutched Biscuit tightly, seeking comfort from his warm, small body. The puppy seemed to sense her tension, pressing his head against her arm. Emma's thoughts wandered endlessly to Rex, the police dog. She remembered his imposing size, the strength in his movements, and the sharpness of his gaze. Yet she also remembered the brief moment when he had obeyed his handler, sitting calmly as she spoke to him. That tiny gesture of restraint had sparked a strange curiosity in Emma. She wondered if Rex, despite his training, could understand kindness. Could he see that she had only tried to protect Biscuit? Could a dog, even one trained for authority, sense innocence? These thoughts swirled in her mind as she rehearsed in front of her bedroom mirror. When the day of the court hearing arrived, Emma's nerves were visible in every small movement. Her parents dressed her carefully, choosing a modest dress that was neat but comfortable. Biscuit was left at home, his little paws pressing against the door as Emma left. The walk to the courthouse felt longer than it really was. The streets seemed unusually quiet. The occasional passerby, glancing curiously at the small family, walking purposefully toward the tall, imposing building. Emma held her mother's hand tightly, while her father carried the envelope containing the court documents, his grip firm and steady. The courthouse loomed ahead, its stone facade and tall pillars radiating authority and permanence. Emma felt a shiver of apprehension as she looked up at the massive structure. Inside, the air smelled faintly of polished wood, paper, and nervous anticipation. Families, attorneys, and law enforcement officers moved through the corridors, their steps echoing against the high ceilings. Emma's heartbeat accelerated as she entered the courtroom itself, a room that seemed far larger and more intimidating than she had imagined. In the center of the room stood Rex, the police dog, sitting beside Officer Daniels. Emma's eyes widened at his size and alertness. Despite remembering his calmness in the park, seeing him here, so official and imposing, made her chest tighten. She gripped her mother's hand even more firmly, though a small spark of courage flickered inside her. She knew she would have to face Rex and explain herself, to convey her honesty and her intentions. Every adult in the room watched silently, aware of the unusual tension. a child facing a trained police dog in an official courtroom setting. The judge, a middle-aged man with kind but piercing eyes, entered and took his seat. His presence brought a sense of authority, yet there was a softness in his demeanor that Emma noticed immediately. He observed her quietly, and she felt his gaze assess not just her actions, but her character. A court clerk called the case, and the room settled into a heavy silence. Emma's knees felt weak, but she reminded herself of her parents' words: honesty, courage, and calm. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her voice, her small chest rising and falling rapidly. Officer Daniels, noticing her nervousness, leaned slightly toward her. "It's okay, Emma. Just tell the truth, and everything will be fine," he said gently. Emma nodded, though her throat felt dry. She stepped forward with her parents' support, feeling the eyes of the room on her. Every whisper, every subtle movement of the officers, every glance from the judge heightened the tension. Yet beneath that fear, Emma felt something new: determination. She would face this challenge, not out of obligation, but because she understood the importance of honesty and empathy. As the hearing began, Emma recounted the events at the park. Her voice trembled at first, but grew steadier as she described Biscuit's excitement, the danger in the street, and her instinct to protect him. She spoke of her fear, her confusion, and her observation of Rex, the police dog, and Officer Daniels' role in keeping her and her puppy safe. Her words were simple yet powerful, painting a vivid picture that resonated with everyone present. The spectators leaned forward, captivated by the clarity and sincerity of a child explaining her perspective. The judge listened intently, occasionally nodding, his expression a mixture of seriousness and empathy. Emma noticed his gaze, and it bolstered her confidence. She realized that this was not a room of judgment alone. It was a place where understanding could exist, where her voice could make a difference. The room, once intimidating and overwhelming, began to feel less like a cage of authority and more like a stage where truth, courage, and innocence could shine. By the end of the first session, Emma had conveyed her story completely. The tension in the room, once thick and suffocating, eased slightly as the judge and officers reflected on her honesty. The unusual sight of a small child facing a massive police dog in a courtroom, speaking with clarity and emotion, left a lasting impression on everyone. Emma returned to her seat, exhausted yet proud, holding Biscuit's memory in her heart as a source of strength. She had taken the first step in transforming a frightening morning into a story of courage, empathy, and understanding, one that would continue to unfold in ways no one could have predicted. Outside the courtroom, the city hummed with normal activity. Cars passed, children played in parks, and neighbors chatted casually. Yet within the walls of that building, a quiet miracle had taken place. A child had faced fear with honesty and grace, and even a trained police dog had become part of a story that reminded everyone of the power of innocence, empathy, and courage. Emma's journey had only just begun, but the seeds of compassion and bravery planted in her heart that day promised a future where understanding could triumph over fear. The day of the court hearing had arrived, and Emma Parker clutched her mother's hand tightly as she approached the towering courthouse. Her heart pounded in her small chest, echoing each step against the cold stone steps. Biscuit wasn't with her this time, left safely at home under her father's watchful care. Yet she could feel his presence in her thoughts, and his little face floated in her mind, reminding her of the reason she was here: to tell the truth and protect the memory of her puppy. The doors to the courtroom were heavy and imposing, and as they swung open, a rush of cool air hit Emma. Inside, the room was vast, lined with polished wooden benches and high ceilings that made even the tallest adults seem smaller. The judge's bench sat elevated, commanding respect and attention. But what caught Emma's eyes most was Rex, the police dog, sitting alert and proud beside Officer Daniels. His sleek coat glinted under the courtroom lights, and his amber eyes, intelligent and focused, studied her intently. Emma froze in place, a mix of fear and curiosity overwhelming her. She remembered Rex from the park, the moment he had stopped and sat calmly when commanded. But now, in this formal setting, his size and strength were magnified. The spectators in the courtroom murmured softly, some exchanging glances, some whispering to each other about the unusual scene. A tiny child facing a trained canine officer in the center of the room. Emma's palms were sweaty, and her chest felt tight, yet she felt a strange, unexplainable pull toward the dog. Her mother leaned down, whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart. Just be yourself." Emma nodded, taking a deep, shuddering breath. She reminded herself that Rex, despite his intimidating appearance, was just doing his job. And she was here to explain her side, to show that her intentions had been pure and her actions had been innocent. With a small but determined step, she moved closer to the center of the room, feeling every eye upon her. Each footfall seemed louder than the last, yet Emma pressed on, driven by courage she hadn't known she possessed. As Emma neared Rex, the courtroom seemed to hold its collective breath. The dog's gaze followed her every movement, yet there was no aggression, only alertness and training. Emma noticed subtle signs, the slight twitch of his ears, the calm rise and fall of his chest, and the steady focus in his eyes. Despite her fear, she felt a connection forming, a recognition that Rex was not her enemy, but a creature performing his duty. The thought gave her a small measure of comfort, and she whispered quietly to herself, "It's just a dog. It's okay." Officer Daniels knelt slightly, his voice soft but audible. "Rex, stay. Good boy." The German shepherd obeyed, his powerful body tense but controlled, and his eyes never leaving Emma. The officer's calm authority reassured her, and she slowly extended a hand, as if to bridge the gap between fear and understanding. The spectators watched in silence, sensing the gravity of the moment. Emma's courage, though small in stature, radiated in the room, challenging the preconceived notions of strength and authority embodied by the canine. Emma spoke softly, her voice trembling but determined. "Hello, Rex. I'm not scared of you. I just want you to know I didn't mean any harm." She took another cautious step forward, feeling the courtroom's tension shift ever so slightly. The judge's expression softened, and even the officers observed with a hint of admiration. In that delicate exchange, a subtle understanding passed between child and dog, an unspoken acknowledgement that fear could be met with empathy, and power could coexist with compassion. The courtroom remained silent, the tension palpable yet transformed. Emma's parents watched with pride, their hearts swelling at their daughter's bravery. They could see her internal struggle, her fear, her courage, and her unwavering desire to do the right thing. Every breath she took, every small step she made toward Rex, was an act of remarkable bravery for someone so young. The spectators, too, were drawn into the narrative unfolding before them, captivated by the rare combination of innocence, honesty, and quiet courage. The prosecutor approached, curious about how Emma would interact with the dog. "Do you understand the role of a police dog, Emma?" he asked gently, not wanting to intimidate her. Emma nodded. "Yes," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Rex is trained to protect people and help keep them safe. I understand that now. I just didn't want my puppy to get hurt." Her words, simple yet profound, struck a chord with everyone present. The judge leaned forward, attentive, as if listening not just to the words, but to the sincerity behind them. Emma took another small step, closer to Rex, her hand extended. I'm sorry if I scared you," she whispered. The words were barely audible, yet they carried immense weight. Rex tilted his head slightly, his gaze softening, acknowledging her presence and her intention. The tension in the courtroom began to ease, replaced by awe and admiration. The spectators exchanged glances, recognizing that this interaction was extraordinary. A small child, guided by empathy and honesty, had found a way to communicate with a creature trained for authority, creating a moment of profound connection. The judge cleared his throat softly, allowing the moment to linger, his eyes glistening with emotion. Emma's parents encouraged her with subtle nods, reinforcing her courage. The interaction between Emma and Rex was more than a child facing a police dog. It was a demonstration of the power of understanding and compassion. In that room, the audience witnessed a lesson in empathy that transcended age, authority, and circumstance. Emma's fear had not disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into a quiet strength that radiated from her very being. Officer Daniels observed the scene with a sense of quiet pride. He had worked with Rex for years, seen him respond to commands in situations that tested even seasoned adults. And yet here was a small child who, through honesty and courage alone, had established a connection that transcended training. A German shepherd's disciplined focus remained, but there was a softness now, a recognition of innocence and pure intention. The courtroom's energy shifted, becoming more reflective, more human, as the story unfolded before their eyes. Emma's voice grew steadier as she continued to describe the events at the park, the moment Biscuit ran into the street, the fear she felt, and her instinct to protect her little friend. Every word was sincere, every expression honest. She didn't exaggerate or embellish. She simply spoke from her heart. The audience was captivated, leaning forward in their seats, caught in the delicate balance of tension and resolution. Emma's courage, despite her young age, illuminated the courtroom, demonstrating that bravery is not defined by size or strength, but by the willingness to face fear with honesty. As the session progressed, Emma and Rex shared subtle gestures. Lowered head, a gentle blink, a shift in posture that signaled mutual understanding. The courtroom, once tense and formal, now felt alive with empathy and connection. Emma's small actions had transformed the environment, showing that even in a place bound by rules and authority, compassion could prevail. The judge's gaze remained fixed on her, reflecting both admiration and contemplation. Every observer recognized that something remarkable was unfolding, a simple yet powerful lesson in courage, empathy, and human-animal connection. By the end of the session, Emma had not only faced Rex, but had begun to establish a bond, fragile yet profound. The courtroom atmosphere, once filled with tension and apprehension, now carried a sense of hope and warmth. Emma returned to her seat, exhausted yet proud, having demonstrated remarkable bravery and insight for her age. She had shown that fear could be met with understanding, and authority could be approached with honesty and empathy. For everyone present, the encounter would leave a lasting impression, a story to remember about the courage of a child and the gentle understanding of a trained police dog. Outside the courtroom, the city continued its daily rhythm, unaware of the extraordinary moments that had unfolded within those walls. Cars passed, pedestrians strolled, and the distant hum of life carried on. Yet inside, a quiet miracle had occurred. A child had faced fear with integrity, and even a creature trained for authority had acknowledged the purity of her intentions. Emma's journey had reached a pivotal moment, one that would shape the remainder of the legal proceedings and leave a lasting impact on the hearts of everyone involved. Emma's parents held her hands tightly as they left the courtroom, pride and relief mingling in their expressions. "You are so brave, Claire," whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Emma nodded, feeling the weight of what she had accomplished. She had faced the enormous presence of a police dog, spoken with honesty, and maintained her composure under pressure. The experience had been terrifying, yet it had revealed a strength within her that even she hadn't known existed. The story of her courage was just beginning, and the lessons learned that day would carry her through the challenges yet to come. The morning sunlight filtered through the tall windows of the courthouse, casting a warm glow across the polished wooden floors. Emma Parker clutched her mother's hand tightly as she stepped forward, her small frame dwarfed by the high ceiling and imposing judge's bench. Today was the day she would speak. Her chest rose and fell rapidly with anticipation and fear, but beneath the anxiety simmered a quiet determination. She had rehearsed the story in her bedroom, countless times, speaking to the mirror and to Biscuit, imagining every question the adults might ask. The courtroom was silent as the clerk called her name. "Emma Parker," he intoned, his voice echoing slightly against the high walls. Emma's heart skipped a beat, but she swallowed her fear and took a deep breath. Her parents squeezed her hands, offering silent reassurance. The judge, a man with kind yet commanding eyes, leaned forward slightly. His gaze was steady, attentive, and filled with a warmth that helped calm the tiny girl in front of him. "Please, have a seat, Emma," the judge said gently, gesturing to the witness stand. Emma climbed the steps slowly, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes upon her. Officer Daniels and Rex were positioned nearby. The dog's gaze followed her movements, alert yet calm. Emma noticed that even Rex seemed to sense her apprehension and was waiting patiently, a fact that gave her a small measure of courage. She took another deep breath and settled herself, clutching the edge of the wooden railing. The courtroom was tense, but expectant. Spectators leaned forward, sensing the significance of this unusual scene. A child recounting a story to the very people who could shape its outcome. The prosecutor, a tall man with a neutral expression, approached carefully, mindful of Emma's age. "Emma," he began, his tone gentle, "can you tell us what happened at the park that morning?" Emma nodded, her throat tight, and started in a small, trembling voice. "I was playing with Biscuit," she began, "and he ran after his ball. He ran into the street, and I got scared. I tried to call him back, but he didn't listen." Her small voice carried honesty and fear, describing the moment in vivid detail. She spoke of the honking cars, the rushing pedestrians, and the overwhelming sensation of panic she had felt. Each word painted a picture that even the adults, hardened by years of legal proceedings, could not ignore. Her eyes drifted to Rex, the police dog, as she continued. "And then the police dog came. He was big and scary. I didn't know what he would do." She shivered slightly at the memory, but she pressed on. "I wanted to protect Biscuit, so I stepped in front of him. I didn't want anyone to get hurt." Emma's hands tightened around the railing as she spoke, her sincerity evident in every gesture. The courtroom leaned in collectively, captivated by the perspective of someone so small and innocent, yet so aware of responsibility. The judge nodded encouragingly. "And how did you feel when the officers and Rex approached?" he asked softly. Emma took a moment, gathering her thoughts. "I was scared," she admitted, "but I also felt curious. I wanted to understand him, even though he was so big. I realized he wasn't trying to hurt me. He was just doing his job." The words were simple, but they carried a maturity and insight that surprised the adults in the room. Even the prosecutor's stern expression softened slightly. Emma continued, describing the fear she had felt and the strange sense of connection she had sensed with Rex. He obeyed the officer and didn't move toward us. I think he knew I didn't want to hurt anyone. I wanted to show him I was careful too. Her words were deliberate and thoughtful, demonstrating empathy beyond her years. The judge leaned back slightly, his eyes reflecting admiration and something closer to wonder. He realized that the story was not just about an incident in the park. It was about courage, understanding, and the innate compassion of a child. Her small voice began to grow steadier as she recounted her actions and feelings. She spoke of the adrenaline, the panic, and the love she felt for Biscuit. She described every detail, the way the puppy's fur glinted in the sunlight, the sound of the cars, the sudden appearance of Rex, and the tension that filled the air. Every word was delivered with honesty and clarity. The courtroom was silent, every person listening intently. Emma's parents exchanged a glance, their pride evident despite the anxiety that still lingered in their hearts. The prosecutor asked about the interaction with Rex specifically. "Emma, did the dog ever try to hurt you or Biscuit?" Emma shook her head emphatically. "No," she said. "He just watched us. I think he was trying to help, like the officer said. I didn't feel like he wanted to hurt anyone. I was just scared at first." Her words were precise and filled with empathy. She had observed Rex carefully, interpreting his actions with an understanding far beyond her age. The audience was moved by her insight and composure. Emma paused for a moment, looking up at the judge. "I learned something that day," she said softly. "Even if someone or something seems scary, it doesn't mean they're bad. Rex was doing his job, and I was just trying to protect my puppy. I think we can understand each other if we try." Her statement was small but powerful. The room was silent, captivated by the clarity and depth of thought expressed by a child so young. The judge nodded slowly, visibly moved by her words. The officer beside Rex whispered softly to the dog, maintaining control and calm. Rex remained seated, his gaze following Emma without any signs of aggression. The tension that had dominated the room at the beginning of the hearing had shifted into something more profound, a shared understanding of intention, innocence, and courage. Emma's parents held their breaths, proud of her courage and wisdom. The entire courtroom was witnessing more than testimony. They were witnessing a lesson in empathy and honesty, delivered by someone who had no formal authority, but immense moral clarity. As Emma's testimony continued, she detailed the final moments at the park, the relief she had felt when Rex obeyed commands, the moment she realized Biscuit was safe, and the gratitude she had felt toward the officers who ensured no harm came to her or her puppy. She spoke of the lingering fear, tempered by understanding, and the realization that courage was not the absence of fear, but acting in spite of it. Her words were heartfelt and eloquent, resonating with everyone in the room. The judge leaned forward slightly, resting his chin on his hand, his eyes fixed on Emma. "You've shown remarkable honesty and bravery, Emma," he said gently. "It is clear that you acted with compassion and awareness. You have taught everyone here something very important today." Emma blushed, her small shoulders rising and falling as she processed the praise. The courtroom remained quiet, the weight of her story settling into the minds of all who had witnessed it. Finally, the prosecutor asked the most crucial question. "Emma, what do you feel toward Rex now?" Emma took a deep breath, glancing at the canine officer. Her voice was steady and clear. I feel like I understand him. I was scared, but now I think he's kind in his way. He did his job, and I did mine. I think we can be friends." Her words, simple yet profound, caused a murmur of admiration in the courtroom. The judge's eyes glistened, and even the officers nodded in approval. Emma stepped down from the witness stand, her legs trembling slightly, but her head held high. She had faced fear, articulated her feelings, and conveyed empathy in a way that resonated with everyone present. The room was transformed from a place of intimidation to one filled with reflection, understanding, and quiet admiration. For Emma, the testimony was not just about explaining the park incident. It was a personal triumph, a moment where honesty, courage, and empathy converged in the heart of a small girl facing enormous challenges. As she returned to her seat, Emma felt a sense of accomplishment and relief. The audience remained attentive, many moved by the simplicity and truth of her words. The judge scribbled a few notes, but his expression revealed his thoughts. This story was about more than rules or legal consequences. It was about humanity, compassion, and the innocence of a child that could touch even the most disciplined hearts. Emma's small frame radiated a quiet power, the kind of power that comes not from authority, but from truth and courage. The session concluded for the day, but the impact of Emma's testimony lingered. Spectators, officers, and courtroom staff alike reflected on the remarkable story they had witnessed. A child, small and seemingly fragile, had faced a trained police dog and an intimidating courtroom with honesty, empathy, and bravery. Her words would echo beyond the walls of the courthouse, inspiring those who heard them to reconsider assumptions about fear, authority, and courage. Outside the courthouse, the world carried on, unaware of the extraordinary event that had taken place inside. Emma walked with her parents down the courthouse steps, holding their hands and feeling a quiet strength she hadn't known before. Biscuit would soon hear all about her bravery, and perhaps even Rex would become more than a symbol of authority, a symbol of understanding and respect. Emma's journey was far from over, but today she had proven that honesty, courage, and empathy could change hearts and minds, no matter one's age. The courtroom had quieted after Emma's testimony, but a palpable tension lingered in the air. Spectators, officers, and courtroom staff sat in anticipation, aware that something extraordinary was unfolding. Emma Parker, small and fragile in appearance, had already demonstrated remarkable courage and empathy, but the most profound moment of her journey had yet to arrive. Her eyes drifted to Rex, the police dog, sitting alert and composed beside Officer Daniels. The German Shepherd's amber gaze followed her every movement, attentive yet patient. Emma's parents held each other's hands, anxiety and pride mingling in their expressions. They had witnessed their daughter face fear with honesty and compassion, but neither could predict what would happen next. The judge leaned forward slightly, his pen poised above his notes, watching the unfolding scene with keen interest. "Emma," he said softly, "is there anything else you'd like to say?" The courtroom fell into an expectant hush. Emma's small voice, barely above a whisper at first, trembled as she answered. I want Rex to know," she began, pausing as she searched for the right words. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, and her small fingers fidgeted with the hem of her dress. Officer Daniels gave her an encouraging nod, a quiet signal that she was safe to express herself. Emma took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle over her. She had already told her story, shared her fear, and conveyed her empathy, but now she sensed an unspoken need to connect directly with the dog who had both frightened and fascinated her. Rex's ears twitched slightly as he caught the tone of Emma's voice. Though trained for precision and control, the dog seemed to sense the unusual significance of the moment. His gaze softened, and his posture relaxed, just enough to indicate attentiveness rather than rigidity. Emma stepped forward, small feet moving carefully across the polished wooden floor, her hands clasped together. Every eye in the courtroom followed her, waiting to see what would happen next. I just want to say?" Emma's voice quavered, but her eyes shone with sincerity. She reached Rex's side, her small hand hovering above the dog's head, unsure if it would be allowed. The courtroom remained silent, the collective breath of the audience held in anticipation. Emma looked into Rex's deep amber eyes, and for a moment it felt as though the world had stopped. Time seemed suspended, the ordinary sounds of the courthouse fading into a hushed stillness. Then, with the courage that had carried her through the park, through preparation, and through her testimony. Emma spoke two simple words that would forever remain etched in the hearts of everyone present. Thank you. The effect was instantaneous and profound. A hush swept through the courtroom as the weight of those words settled over everyone. The judge's pen paused mid-air, his eyes glistening with emotion. The officers exchanged glances, their professional composure giving way to awe at the child's bravery and empathy. Even Rex, trained for observation and control, leaned slightly toward Emma, acknowledging her presence with a subtle, instinctive gesture, a small tilt of the head, and a gentle exhale. The simple phrase carried immense meaning, encapsulating gratitude, understanding, and respect. Emma's parents felt tears prick at their eyes. Claire reached for her husband's hand, squeezing it tightly as they shared a moment of silent pride. Their daughter, so small and vulnerable, had achieved what many adults could not. She had bridged the gap between fear and understanding, authority and innocence, child and trained police dog. The courtroom, once filled with tension and apprehension, now held a reverent calm, every person touched by the authenticity of Emma's gesture. The judge's voice broke the silence, thick with emotion. "Emma," he said softly, "that was remarkable. In two simple words, you've conveyed a depth of understanding and empathy that is truly extraordinary. You have reminded us all of the power of honesty, courage, and kindness." His words hung in the air, reverberating through the room. Emma's cheeks flushed, but she held her gaze steady on Rex, feeling the weight of her connection with the dog and the acknowledgement of her courage. Officer Daniels knelt slightly, his hand resting lightly on Rex's back. "Good boy," he murmured, his voice quiet yet proud. Rex exhaled, a subtle sign of calm, and shifted slightly closer to Emma, reinforcing the bond that had formed in those few brief moments. The audience was captivated, many leaning forward in their seats, moved by the extraordinary interaction between child and K9. The two words, simple yet profound, had transformed the room from one of authority and apprehension into one filled with empathy, respect, and emotional connection. Emma's voice, now steadier, added a few more words to clarify her feelings. "I was scared at first, but I understand you were just helping. I just wanted everyone to be safe." Her statement, though brief, reinforced the wisdom behind her gratitude. The judge nodded solemnly, reflecting on the profound lesson delivered by someone so young. The courtroom had witnessed more than testimony. It had witnessed a demonstration of human compassion and the ability of innocence to touch even the most disciplined hearts. The spectators, moved by the moment, began to whisper quietly among themselves. Some dabbed at tears, others smiled softly, recognizing the rare purity of emotion displayed before them. Emma had shown that courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act with integrity despite it. She had demonstrated that empathy can transcend age, size, and even species, reaching into the hearts of all who bore witness. In that courtroom, a small child had redefined bravery and the meaning of gratitude. The judge called the courtroom to order once more, his voice steady yet warm. "Emma, you have given us all a powerful reminder of the strength found in honesty and compassion. Your actions today speak volumes about your character and courage. Thank you for sharing your story with us." Emma nodded, a shy smile spreading across her face. She had faced fear, expressed herself with sincerity, and earned the admiration of everyone present. For a child of 7, the experience was both daunting and transformative, leaving an indelible mark on her young heart. Officer Daniels stood, keeping a protective eye on Rex, and nodded approvingly at Emma. "You did very well," he said softly. Rex exhaled, his posture relaxed, signaling the end of his professional vigilance and acknowledging the bond formed in those critical moments. Emma felt a mixture of relief and pride. She had not only faced the intimidating presence of a police dog, but had also bridged a gap of understanding, leaving a lasting impression on those around her. The session drew to a close, and the judge offered final instructions, assuring the Parkers that Emma's honesty and courage would be carefully considered. The courtroom, once tense and formal, had been transformed into a space of reflection and shared humanity. Emma, small but extraordinary, had turned fear into understanding, anxiety into courage, and two words simple yet profound into a message that would resonate far beyond the walls of the courthouse. Outside, the city moved on with its usual rhythm, but inside the hearts of those who had witnessed the moment, a profound change had occurred. Emma's bravery and sincerity had reminded everyone present of the power of empathy, honesty, and courage. For the Parkers, the experience was life-changing, instilling in their daughter a confidence that would guide her in future challenges. For Rex, the interaction reinforced the nuanced connection between training, duty, and the recognition of innocence and intention. As they left the courthouse, Emma's parents enveloped her in a warm embrace. "You were amazing, Claire," whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of you." John nodded, holding their daughter tightly. Emma's small hands gripped theirs, feeling a newfound sense of strength and purpose. She had faced fear, expressed herself, and made a connection that transcended words. The experience would stay with her forever, a reminder that even the smallest gestures, spoken honestly and with courage, can have profound effects. Emma looked up at the towering courthouse one last time before they stepped onto the sunlit street. The city hummed with normal activity, unaware of the extraordinary event that had taken place inside. Cars passed, pedestrians strolled, and children played in parks nearby. Yet for Emma, Biscuit, and even Rex, the world had shifted in subtle ways. Trust had been built, courage had been demonstrated, and two small words, "thank you," had left a lasting impression on everyone who bore witness. The day concluded with quiet reflection for the Parkers. Emma, though exhausted, felt a glow of accomplishment. She had faced a daunting challenge, spoken her truth, and fostered understanding between herself and a creature trained to respond to authority. In those moments, she learned that courage is not measured by size or strength, but by the willingness to act with honesty, empathy, and integrity. Her journey was far from over, but she had taken a crucial step, leaving a mark on the hearts of all who had seen her bravery. The courtroom was quiet after Emma's two simple words, "Thank you," had reverberated through the air. The impact of her courage and honesty was palpable. Judges, officers, and spectators alike were moved in ways no one could have anticipated. The judge, a man usually reserved and measured, leaned back slightly in his chair, the weight of emotion softening his normally stern expression. Emma's small voice had touched something profound, a reminder that even in structured, rule-bound spaces, innocence and honesty could transform hearts. Emma's parents watched her with pride and amazement. Claire brushed away a tear as she whispered to John, "I've never seen anything like this. She's incredible." John nodded silently, his jaw tight with emotion. They had always known Emma possessed courage, but seeing her convey empathy so clearly to a police dog and to a room full of adults left them both speechless. For them, this was more than a legal proceeding. It was a lesson in the extraordinary potential of a child's heart. Officer Daniels shifted slightly beside Rex, the police dog's disciplined gaze remaining on Emma. Yet there was a subtle softness in Rex's posture, a small acknowledgement of the child who had approached him with fear, yet also with remarkable understanding. The dog, trained for authority and obedience, had responded not just to commands, but to the honesty and empathy emanating from Emma. The subtle exchange between them highlighted a truth, often overlooked. Empathy can transcend. Training and connection can occur even between the most unlikely pairs. The judge cleared his throat softly, bringing the courtroom back to focus. "Emma, you have given us all an important lesson today," he said, his voice steady yet warm. "You have shown courage, honesty, and empathy. These qualities will remain with you and with all of us long after this courtroom session ends." His words carried weight, and the room seemed to exhale collectively, the tension replaced by reverent reflection. Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of pride, relief, and understanding. The prosecutor, who had remained professional and composed throughout, approached Emma carefully. "You've been very brave, Emma," he said softly. "Your actions and words have helped everyone here see the events at the park more clearly." Emma nodded shyly, feeling the sincere admiration behind the statement. It was clear that even adults accustomed to legal proceedings recognized the uniqueness of what she had accomplished. Her honesty and courage had cut through formalities, leaving a lasting impression that no legal argument could replace. The courtroom clerk called the next part of the hearing, but the atmosphere had shifted. What had begun as a formal and intimidating process was now suffused with an unspoken acknowledgement of the child's impact. Spectators whispered quietly to each other, expressing admiration for Emma's composure and insight. Some dabbed at their eyes, others smiled softly, recognizing the rare purity of emotion displayed by someone so young. The room, once tense and intimidating, was now alive with empathy and respect. Emma's parents encouraged her to stand as the next witness approached. "Go ahead, sweetheart," Claire said softly. "You've already done so well." Emma nodded, her small fingers gripping her mother's hand briefly before letting go. She understood that her role had been significant, and even though the formal proceedings would continue, the story she had told, the truth she had spoken, had already begun to transform the hearts of those present. The next witness, a nearby park official, began describing the scene from their perspective. Yet every adult's account, detailed and precise, lacked the emotional resonance Emma had brought. Her description of fear, courage, and empathy had colored the narrative in ways that facts alone could not. The judge and the spectators listened, but Emma's testimony lingered in their minds, shaping their perception of the incident. It was a powerful reminder that emotional truth can be as impactful as factual truth in understanding human, or in this case, child and animal behavior. Emma, seated with her parents, watched as Rex remained calm, his gaze occasionally flicking toward her. She felt a quiet sense of connection with him, a bond that had grown in a few short, intense moments. It was a reminder that understanding could exist even between beings of different sizes, species, and authority. The connection was subtle, yet profound, demonstrating the depth of empathy possible when fear is met with kindness and honesty. Emma's experience had transcended a simple park incident. It had become a lesson in trust, understanding, and courage. The judge addressed the courtroom once more. "Let this day serve as a reminder of the importance of honesty, courage, and empathy. Emma Parker has demonstrated that even the smallest among us can teach the greatest lessons." His words resonated deeply with everyone present. The officers, the spectators, the legal staff, all were reminded of the power of innocence and the transformative potential of a child's insight. Emma, though small, had become the center of a narrative that emphasized understanding over judgment and connection over fear. After a short recess, the court reconvened, but the tone had shifted. Witnesses gave their accounts, lawyers presented their observations, yet the memory of Emma's 2 words, "Thank you," remained present. It lingered in the room like a quiet melody, reminding everyone that the proceedings were not just about legality, but about understanding, empathy, and the profound impact one person, even a child, can have on others. Outside, the courthouse steps were bustling with ordinary life, but inside, the extraordinary had occurred. Emma had faced fear, articulated her truth, and connected with Rex in a way that left the room transformed. The city around them continued, its rhythm oblivious to the small yet monumental act of courage and empathy that had taken place. Yet within the hearts of those present, a change had occurred, a gentle but enduring shift in perception and understanding. Emma's parents, holding her hands as they prepared to leave for a brief break, whispered quietly, "You've changed." "People today," Claire said. Emma's eyes widened slightly, realizing the magnitude of what she had done. John nodded, pride evident in his expression. "Not just people, Emma," he said. "You've changed the way they think about courage and kindness." Emma blushed, but felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had faced something terrifying and turned it into an opportunity to teach and connect. Returning to the courtroom, Emma noticed the officers exchanging glances, subtly acknowledging the impact of her actions. Rex, calm yet attentive, seemed to sense the continued connection. The room remained formal, but beneath the structure, a quiet reverence lingered. Emma's journey, which had begun with fear and uncertainty, had grown into an experience of empowerment, understanding, and subtle leadership. Even those trained in authority were learning from the small child who had spoken truth with courage and clarity. The judge called for a final review of the evidence and statements. Emma's parents remained close, offering silent support as the legal proceedings neared conclusion. Though the formalities continued, the emotional and moral impact of Emma's actions remained central to the room. Her courage had shifted the tone of the court, fostering a sense of empathy that transcended the usual boundaries of authority, age, and experience. Each observer carried away a reminder of the extraordinary power of honesty and bravery in the face of fear. As the session concluded for the day, the judge addressed Emma one last time. "Emma, you have taught us all something invaluable," he said softly. "Remember the courage, honesty, and empathy you have shown today. It will serve you well in life, and it will leave a lasting impression on those around you." Emma nodded, feeling a warmth of pride and understanding settle over her. She had faced fear, articulated truth, and connected with a being larger and stronger than herself in ways that words could barely describe. Outside the courthouse, the city continued its ordinary rhythm. Cars passed, children played, and the distant hum of life carried on. Yet for Emma, her parents, and even Rex, something extraordinary had occurred. Trust had been built, courage had been displayed, and the transformative power of two words, "thank you," had shifted perceptions and hearts. Emma's journey was far from over, but she had achieved something remarkable. She had reminded everyone that empathy, honesty, and courage can resonate far beyond their immediate context. The day ended with quiet reflection for the Parkers. Emma, though tired, felt a new strength and sense of purpose. She had faced the enormous presence of a police dog, conveyed her truth, and inspired those around her. Her bravery and honesty had created a moment that would remain in the hearts of all who witnessed it. As they walked home, holding hands and sharing quiet smiles, Emma felt the warmth of accomplishment and the knowledge that even the smallest person can have an enormous impact on the world. The courtroom had become a quiet place of reflection. Emma Parker, small and unassuming, had already shifted the energy of the room with her honesty, bravery, and empathy. Each spectator, lawyer, and officer carried the weight of her testimony in their minds. Even Rex, the police dog, seemed to sense the significance of the proceedings, sitting calmly but alert beside Officer Daniels. The tension that had once filled the air was replaced by anticipation. Everyone awaited the judge's response to this extraordinary display of courage and understanding. Emma's parents sat close, their hands intertwined, faces reflecting pride and nervous anticipation. Claire whispered to John, "No matter what happens, she's already won." John nodded silently, his eyes never leaving Emma. She was small, yet her presence had commanded attention, reshaping the courtroom with sincerity and integrity. It was clear that whatever the outcome, Emma had already left a profound mark on everyone present. The judge, a man known for his meticulous nature, tapped his pen lightly against his notes before rising from his bench. The room quieted further, a sense of gravity settling over the proceedings. "Today," he began, his voice measured yet imbued with warmth, "we have witnessed something rare and extraordinary. A child has spoken with honesty, courage, and empathy in a way that has affected us all. Emma Parker has not only described events accurately, but she has also demonstrated an understanding and maturity beyond her years." His words rippled through the courtroom, eliciting quiet nods from officers and spectators alike. He paused, allowing the weight of his statement to settle over the audience. It is clear that Emma acted with pure intentions, and that her fear and bravery were intertwined in the events at the park. Furthermore, her interaction with Rex, the trained police dog, has provided us with insight not only into the incident, but into the human capacity for empathy and understanding, regardless of age. The judge's voice softened as he looked directly at Emma. "Your actions and words have reminded us of the power of compassion and the importance of honesty in difficult circumstances." Emma's small frame rose slightly from her seat, instinctively acknowledging the gravity of the moment. Her parents held their breaths, sensing the emotional impact on their daughter. She had already faced fear, conveyed truth, and demonstrated empathy. Now the judge's words solidified the significance of her actions. The courtroom, once formal and intimidating, had been transformed into a space of reflection, understanding, and quiet admiration. Officer Daniels nodded subtly too. Rex, acknowledging the dog's calm demeanor and the subtle but clear recognition of Emma's sincerity. The trained K9, an embodiment of authority and obedience, had responded not just to commands, but to the honesty and courage emanating from a small child. It was a moment that transcended ordinary understanding, highlighting the rare connection between humans and animals, particularly when trust and empathy were present. The judge continued, his voice gaining a deliberate strength. "In light of Emma's testimony and the clear demonstration of her courage, honesty, and empathy, the court recognizes that the events at the park were accident circumstances that could not have been prevented by a child her age." The court further acknowledges the remarkable interaction between Emma and Rex, which demonstrates the potential for understanding across boundaries of fear, authority, and species. His words were deliberate, reflecting the profound impact of Emma's story. He paused, letting the statement resonate throughout the room. Spectators whispered quietly to one another, some dabbing at tears, others smiling softly. Emma's parents exchanged glances, pride radiating from their faces. Their daughter, so small and seemingly fragile, had not only faced fear, but had also profoundly affected everyone present. The courtroom, an environment often dominated by rules and protocol, had been touched by the extraordinary honesty and courage of a child. The judge looked down at Emma once more. "Emma Parker," he said, his voice gentle yet firm, "you have taught us lessons that many adults fail to learn in a lifetime. Your actions today have demonstrated that courage and integrity are not measured by size or age, but by the willingness to act with honesty and empathy." Emma's eyes glistened with pride and relief. She had faced fear, spoken truth, and now received acknowledgement from an authority figure whose words carried tremendous weight. The courtroom remained silent, all eyes focused on the young girl whose actions had transformed the room. The judge's acknowledgement of her bravery and insight went Beyond legal formalities, it was an emotional affirmation of the value of honesty, empathy, and courage in the face of fear. Emma had demonstrated that even the smallest among us could inspire profound reflection and change. He continued, outlining the court's decision. Given the circumstances and Emma's clear intentions, no legal action will be taken against her. Furthermore, the court commends the officers involved, particularly Officer Daniels and Rex, for their professionalism and understanding. This case serves as a reminder that justice is not only about rules and regulations, but also about recognizing courage, empathy, and the human and sometimes animal capacity for understanding. Emma's parents exhaled in relief, tears glistening in Claire's eyes. John held his daughter tightly, whispering words of pride and love. Emma's small hand rested in hers, feeling the warmth and reassurance of her parents' support. She had faced fear, expressed herself honestly, and fostered understanding in a courtroom that had once seemed overwhelming and intimidating. Her actions had created a ripple effect of empathy and reflection, touching everyone present. The judges. Words had an immediate effect on the spectators as well. Many whispered quietly among themselves, moved by the extraordinary display of courage and honesty. Some reflected on their own lives, recognizing the lessons imparted by a child who had acted with integrity and bravery. Others marveled at the subtle but profound connection between Emma and Rex, understanding that empathy and trust could transcend even the most formal and structured environments. Officer Daniels stood and nodded to Emma, his expression a mixture of professional respect and genuine admiration. Rex, sensing the shift in atmosphere, remained calm but attentive, acknowledging the connection that had formed during the proceedings. Emma smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and pride. She had faced a challenging situation, communicated her truth, and earned recognition in a manner few could imagine. The courtroom slowly began to disperse, but the emotional impact lingered. Emma's story and her interaction with Rex had left an indelible mark on everyone present. Judges, officers, spectators, and legal staff carried the memory of a small child's courage, honesty, and empathy into their daily lives. A reminder that the extraordinary could emerge from even the most ordinary circumstances. Outside, his city's rhythm continued. Cars passed, people walked, and life went on. But for Emma, her parents, and Rex, something profound had occurred. Courage had been demonstrated, honesty had been recognized, and empathy had bridged the gap between human and animal, child and authority. Emma had proven that even the smallest voice, spoken truthfully and bravely, could transform hearts and minds. The Parker family left the courthouse slowly, savoring the significance of the day. Claire held Emma's hand tightly, whispering, "You were amazing today." Everyone saw it. John nodded, adding, "You showed the world the meaning of courage and honesty, Emma. I am so proud of you." Emma's small hands gripped theirs in return, a quiet smile spreading across her face. She felt both relieved and empowered, understanding that her actions had meaning far beyond what she could fully comprehend. As they walked toward their car, Emma glanced back at the courthouse one last time. The steps she had climbed, the words she had spoken, and the bravery she had shown had created a story that would remain with the people who witnessed it. Rex, too, had been part of that story, a reminder that understanding and connection could occur even across boundaries of fear and authority. Emma's journey had reached a pivotal moment, and the lessons learned that day would guide her and inspire others for years to come. The family drove home in quiet reflection, the events of the day settling gently into their memories. Emma, tired but glowing with pride, leaned her head against her mother's shoulder. She thought of Biscuit, imagining his little tail wagging in approval, and of Rex, the imposing yet kind canine who had listened, observed, and acknowledged her bravery. In her young heart, Emma understood that courage was not about size, fearlessness, or physical strength. It was about honesty, empathy, and the willingness to face challenges with integrity. That evening, as Emma recounted her experience to her parents and relived the moments of fear, bravery, and connection, she realized that the day had changed her in ways she could never have predicted. She had faced fear, expressed truth, and connected deeply with both humans and animals in a situation that had seemed daunting and overwhelming. The lessons she had learned about empathy, courage, and the transformative power of honesty would remain with her throughout her life, guiding her in ways both big and small. The days following the courthouse proceedings were filled with quiet reflection for Emma Parker and her family. Though the incident at the park seemed ordinary at first, it had grown into something far more significant, a story of courage, honesty, and connection that touched everyone who had witnessed it. Emma's small voice and the two words, "Thank you," had become a symbol of empathy and bravery, echoing long after the final gavel had fallen. Emma returned to school, where her classmates gathered around her with wide eyes, eager to hear about the events that had drawn national attention. Some whispered excitedly, others looked at her with newfound respect. Emma's parents, Claire and Jean, watched proudly from the doorway as she recounted the experience with humility and sincerity. She described the fear she had felt, the way Rex had approached her, and the courage it took to speak the truth. Every word was met with awe and admiration, reinforcing the lesson that bravery comes in many forms, and that even a small child can have a profound impact. Teachers, inspired by Emma's story, used it as a lesson in empathy and understanding. In classrooms, students discussed courage, not as the absence of fear, but as the willingness to act with honesty and integrity. Emma, though shy, found herself becoming an unexpected role model. She had faced an intimidating presence and a complex situation, yet she had shown that the strength of character is not measured by size or experience, but by the depth of one's heart and the clarity of one's intentions. Meanwhile, the story of Emma and Rex spread through the local community. Officers who had been present at the courthouse spoke to their colleagues about the remarkable child who had faced fear with such composure. The police department issued a statement praising Emma's bravery and highlighting the importance of empathy in interactions with the public. Rex, now a symbol of understanding as well as law enforcement, became known as the dog who had witnessed courage in the purest form. Officer Daniels, proud of his canine partner and the lesson Emma had imparted, shared the story with other K-9 units, emphasizing the bond that can exist between human and animal, even in high-pressure situations. For the Parker family, life slowly returned to its usual rhythm, yet nothing felt quite the same. Emma's parents noticed a subtle shift in their daughter's demeanor. She seemed more confident, more aware of her ability to influence and inspire others. Claire marveled at the transformation, realizing that the events at the courthouse had strengthened Emma's sense of self and her understanding of the world. "She's grown so much in just a few days," Claire remarked one evening as they prepared dinner. John nodded, reflecting on the courage and empathy that had defined their daughter's actions. "She's learned something that many adults never truly understand," he said quietly. Emma's bond with Biscuit, her playful puppy, also deepened. She cared for him with renewed attentiveness, mindful of the responsibility she bore. Each walk in the park became an opportunity to practice patience, observation, and compassion. Emma remembered the fear she had felt that day, the rush of adrenaline, and the eventual triumph of honesty and courage. Biscuit, unaware of the courtroom drama, seemed to sense the change in his young owner, responding with exuberance and loyalty. Together, they explored the world, small but growing, and full of understanding. The Parker family occasionally visited Rex at the police department, where the dog greeted Emma with calm recognition. Their visits were brief but meaningful, a reminder of the extraordinary connection forged under unusual circumstances. Emma approached Rex cautiously at first, just as she had on the day of the park incident. Yet the dog's presence was no longer intimidating. It was comforting. The bond between child and canine officer became a quiet lesson for everyone who observed it, a testament to trust, patience, and understanding. As weeks turned into months, the story of Emma Parker and Rex began to inspire others beyond their immediate community. Local news outlets highlighted the events, focusing not on fear or danger, but on courage, empathy, and the importance of listening to and learning from one another. Emma, though shy of the spotlight, participated in interviews with the guidance of her parents, sharing her experiences with humility and sincerity. Her message was simple yet profound. Fear is natural, but honesty, empathy, and courage can overcome it. In the courtroom, the judge reflected on the impact of the case long after it concluded. He shared with colleagues that witnessing Emma's testimony had reminded him why justice is not solely about rules and regulations. It is also about understanding, compassion, and recognizing the bravery in everyday acts. His words encouraged other judges and legal professionals to consider the human element in their own proceedings, emphasizing empathy alongside legality. Emma's small voice had created ripples far beyond the park and the courthouse, affecting systems and practices that touched countless lives. For Officer Daniels and Rex, the experience reinforced the importance of observation, patience, and respect for the intentions of others. In canine training sessions, he recounted the story to younger officers, emphasizing that authority is most effective when combined with empathy and understanding. Rex, once viewed purely as an instrument of enforcement, became a symbol of nuanced judgment and the power of connection. Their relationship with Emma reminded them that courage can be found in the most unexpected places, and that even a child can teach lessons that resonate deeply with trained professionals. Emma herself continued to grow in confidence, applying the lessons learned from the courthouse to her everyday life. She approached challenges at school with a newfound sense of resilience, spoke up in situations where honesty was needed, and approached friendships with empathy and understanding. The small child who had faced a police dog with fear had transformed into a young girl aware of her strength, integrity, and the power of her words. She had discovered that courage is not measured in grand gestures, but in the honesty and compassion of everyday actions. The Parker family often reflected on the extraordinary journey they had experienced together. Claire and John realized that Emma's courage had been a reminder not only to the community, but also to them as parents, that nurturing empathy, integrity, and courage in a child could create impacts far beyond the immediate family. They watched as Emma, small yet resilient, influenced the world around her simply by being honest, brave, and compassionate. In the quiet moments at home, Emma would sometimes think back to the courthouse, the towering presence of Rex, the watchful eyes of the judge, the faces of the spectators. She remembered the fear, the trembling hands, and the eventual triumph of speaking her truth. And she remembered the two words, "Thank you," which had changed the room and the hearts of everyone in it. She realized that the power of her words had come not from their length or complexity, but from their honesty, sincerity, and courage. As Emma lay in bed one evening, reflecting on her journey, she felt a deep sense of peace. She had faced fear, expressed truth, and connected with beings both human and animal in profound ways. She understood that life would continue to present challenges, but the lessons she had learned, the importance of honesty, empathy, and courage would guide her through any situation. Her experiences had transformed her, her family, and even those who had merely witnessed the story unfold. The park, once a place of fear and uncertainty, became a place of reflection and joy. Emma, biscuit in tow, walked through the familiar paths with confidence and awareness. She had confronted fear, learned the value of honesty, and experienced the transformative power of empathy. Each visit to the park reminded her of the courage she had shown and the impact a small voice can have when guided by truth and integrity. Years later, Emma would look back on that day as a defining moment in her life. The courthouse wrecks and the audience of spectators became more than memories. They were symbols of the extraordinary capacity of children to inspire, teach, and transform. The lessons learned would shape her character, influence her decisions, and guide her interactions with others throughout her life. Courage, honesty, and empathy had become her guiding principles, instilled not through instruction, but through lived experience. The story of Emma Parker, Biscuit, and Rex remained a touchstone for the community. Teachers, officers, parents, and children alike shared it as an example of how fear can be met with courage, and how honesty and empathy can create understanding across boundaries. Emma's small voice had resonated far beyond her size and age, proving that bravery is not measured by physical strength, but by the integrity of one's actions and words. In the end, the day at the park, the courtroom testimony, and the two simple words, "Thank you," became a lasting reminder of human and animal connection, the power of empathy, and the extraordinary courage that resides in even the smallest hearts. Emma's story would continue to inspire those who heard it, demonstrating that honesty, bravery, and compassion are qualities that transcend age, authority, and circumstance, and that every individual, no matter how small, has the power to change the world.